Hello everybody and welcome to our semifinal match of the StarCityGames.com Modern Open here in Columbus, brought to you by Ultimate Guard. I'm Chris Van Meter here with Andrew Boswell, and we're about to watch Tom Ross on Green-White Tron, who is our first seed after Swiss, playing against Robert Cucunato, who is our fourth seed with Affinity. And I do have to say, that was a pretty nice beard.
Oh yeah, that is a manly beard. Thumbs up to Robert Cucunato. We've got a classic, legendary, match of a jacket versus a beard.
All right. Well, Tom is going to lead off with an Urza's Mine and an Expedition map. He has a tower, which means he can assemble Tron for turn 3. On Robert's turn, though, we have a Darksteel Citadel, Ornithopter, Springleaf Drum into another Springleaf Drum. Let's see what Robert can come up with. All right, so it looks like he's just going to cast a Steel Overseer and another Springleaf Drum.
And a one-land hand, but a one-land hand that has a fair amount of mana. Robert has a lot of stuff on the board. He doesn't have very many things that can actually attack, though. So if Tom Ross is able to play a Karn here and take down that Steel Overseer, it's going to be one of the rare situations where a turn 3 Karn against Affinity is actually going to hold some weight.
All right, so Tom is going to go find the Urza's Power Plant that he needs to finish his Tron. Let's see if he's able to deploy something powerful to the board here.
With this draw from Robert Cucunato, this is also a situation where a Wormcoil Engine could potentially just race the Affinity draw. Tom having Tron on turn 3 and being on the play is exactly where he wants to be in this matchup.
And so it doesn't look like he has a Karn. He does have a World Breaker, but he can't generate green mana and still be able to play the World Breaker. So let's see what Tom decides to do. He's going to play his Chromatic Sphere and cycle it into some green mana. Well, there's Nugan, which, while it can't minus to get rid of a bunch of colorless permanents, if Robert doesn't have a lot going on, you can just start plussing and picking things off.
Yeah, and because it has so much loyalty, if Tom Ross is at a high life total, Robert is going to have no real good options for attacks.
All right, so Tom has a white mana floating. Ooh, and there's a Path to Exile.
Wow, and Tom floated that white mana just on the offhand chance that he would draw a Path to Exile, knowing that that is the one thing that he really wanted here to get that Steel Overseer before it started getting out of control. So, great move from Tom Ross.
All right, well, Robert Cucunato is going to go find an island from that Path to Exile. And Tom, after cycling a few cards and using that path, is going to play a Chromatic Star and an Expedition map. Looks like we'll be passing the turn back to Robert Cucunato. So he didn't have a terribly explosive turn 3, but next turn, Ugin is going to come down and start doing some things. Plus he has World Breaker, which is going to be very good here. It's a way to exile an artifact like a Cranial Plating, gives him a giant reach blocker, so he can block basically everything.
And the reach blocker is particularly relevant because normally one of the advantages that Affinity has is it can attack you in the air. So Robert really wants to deploy multiple attackers. He knows that Tom Ross doesn't have access to something like Pyroclasm, so Robert kind of has the green light to just play out everything he can. But it looks like he's... All right, and he's still not able to attack. A little unfortunate for Robert Cucunato.
Oh, and there is an Oblivion Stone.
Jeez. And that is going to be massive.
Wow.
Tom Ross, top decking like a boss. Someone's got to make that a new internet meme. That's a good one.
He can even sacrifice his baubles here to draw some cards and get another land before he plays that stone and uses it. And that's going to get rid of 7 different permanents.
Yeah, pretty unbelievable. Just the good old classic 7 for 1.
All right, so he's going to start off by using his Expedition map. This is likely going to go get him that Sanctum of Ugin. Oh, he's just going to get a brush land. All right, looks like Matt on Dredge is up a game over Kevin Jones.
And I had a pretty high expectation for Kevin to lose game 1, but there's a small chance that he's able to take the next 2 games, but I wouldn't bet on it.
Tom is going to use that Oblivion Stone. He's going to 7 for 1 Robert Cucunato and even draw a card when the the expedition map is on the way out, or on the chromatic star is on the way out. But he went and got that brush land, so now he can play it and just play a world breaker here now.
Yeah, and this game is basically just over. Tom Ross, he's firing on all cylinders. He's got 30 mana or something like that. I don't know, some exorbitant number. I guess 30 is not that much. Maybe 30 million mana is how much he has. And he's just going to be playing these huge threats over and over and over again and hammer away at Robert Cucunato.
Well, he is going to use that expedition map to go find Sanctum of Ugin. He's going to play Ugin, sacrificing Sanctum of Ugin to go get Ulamog.
I almost want to say that
just going to scoop it
Sanctum of Ugin is the best card in Tom Ross's deck, because every time I see him play it and then sacrifice, the opponent always seems to scoop up their cards.
Yeah, they're just done. you can usually beat the first threat, whether it's Ulamog or whatever, but the next one is the one that always gets you.
Yeah, Robert Cucunato is going to have a hard time beating any threats that game. He had a lot of Springleaf drums and 0 power creatures in a matchup where he needs to be a little more aggressive than that.
He was playing music. Kind of reminds me of that image where it's like a war zone and there's just like one guy with a guitar, just like wailing on the guitar, and everybody else has guns.
Yep.
All right, so on Tom's side, let's take a look at the sideboard. He has 3 Blessed Alliance, 3 Nature's Claim, 3 Warping Whale, 2 Rest in Peace, 2 Thrag Tusk, 1 Ravenous Trap, and 1 Ghost Quarter. How do we think Tom's going to sideboard?
So Tom has the opportunity to turn into much more of a mid-range control deck. You can basically make an argument for a lot of the cards in his sideboard. Blessed Alliance, Nature's Claim, Warping Whale, and Thrag Tusk, along with Ghost Quarter, all have some utility in the matchup. I like the Nature's Claims the most. I think they're going to be the best, the most standout card. I don't think he'll bring in all of the other ones that I mentioned, but he'll probably bring in some of the other ones.
Now on Robert's side, we have 2 Gear per Ether Grid, 1 Whip Flare, 1 Blood Moon, 2 Ancient Grudge, 1 Etch Champion, 1 Bitter Blossom, and 2 Grafdigger's Cage. How do you think Robert's going to sideboard?
So I actually don't like any of the cards in his sideboard for this matchup. He could bring in a Blood Moon. He could bring in the 2 Ancient Grudges. He has 3 Galvanic Blasts in his main deck that he may want to take out along with 1 Thoughtcast. So I think that Ancient Grudge is probably better than Galvanic Blast, and Blood Moon is probably better than Galvanic Blast, but I don't even think it's better by a whole lot, and I could see him just not bringing them in at all.
Well, that does make sense, and I could see all of that happening. While we wait for our players to finish up shuffling here and sideboarding, let's take a quick second and talk about this awesome weekly sale that we have going on over at StarCityGames.com. Do you like foils? Do you like sweet-looking cards? We can get up to 25% off the Masterpiece Series cards over at our weekly sale that ends Monday at 10:59 a.m. This is Battle for Zendikar, Oath of the Gatewatch Expeditions, Kaladesh Inventions, the Masterpiece Series. So if you do want to get some sweet foils and some nice art, new art cards, head on over to StarCityGames.com for that weekly sale.
Yeah,
it's just a guy.
I'm not a big foil guy, but I appreciate the style.
Let's go ahead and figure out. So these points are real important for Tom.
Oh yeah.
He's trying to, leapfrog Jeff Hoagland and ride through next weekend at the Invitational for Player of the Year. So let's double check the payouts here to see just what they're playing for. These players are already in the top 4, so they're already getting at least $1,000 and 20 SCG points, which is going to be a good amount of points.
So this is essentially a $1,000 match for each of these players.
At least.
Pretty big deal.
But the winner is going to get $5,000 and 30 points. Those 30 points is what Tom has his eye on. He wants those points. He wants to be able to put as much space between himself and Jeff Hoagland as he can going into the Invitational. Second place wouldn't be too bad. $2,000, $25. Top $4,000, $20. And then in our last quarterfinal match, we already saw $500 a piece and 15 SCG points is the payout. And they all get an invite to the Invitational coming up here in Atlanta, December 2nd through the 4th.
Yeah, and we talk about the points a lot, we talk about the race a lot, and for these players, it really is one of the keys to them being a professional player, is being able to maintain those points to have the buys, be able to keep rolling those into subsequent events, and then the Players' Championship is really that prize at the end of the year that all of these players are really dying to get into.
So it looks like Tom currently has an 8-point lead over Jeff in the Player of the Year race if he were to lose this match. But if he wins it,
Things get a whole lot
things
better.
get a whole lot better.
Oh, yeah.
He could potentially extend that by quite a bit. It looks like Robert Cucunato is going to take a mulligan. Let's see if Tom likes what he's got or if he's going to mulligan. Looks like he's contemplating if he's going to keep his hand or not.
He's probably deciding if he wants to play Wormcoil Engine on turn 3 or Karn on turn 3. I think that's what he's thinking about.
I usually go with Karn, but I'm not a picky man.
Mm-hmm.
I'll take either.
Yeah.
And be just as happy.
Mm-hmm. So I'm hoping that Robert is able to get a faster start. I feel like when we've seen Affinity on camera this weekend, it really hasn't done what I usually expect it to do. I'm used to seeing Affinity have multiple attackers on turn, potentially even as early as turn 2, and really threatening like a turn 3.5 kill, where the game may go to turn 4, but the opponent's essentially dead on board by the time it gets to that attack phase.
Those draws usually involve Mox Opal, some number of Ornithopters or Memnites, and a Cranial Plating or 2.
Yeah, or a Ravager, or a Steel Overseer actually being able to survive, or a Master of Ethereum. This deck is a very synergistic deck and is a lot of things that can really raise the power level of all the cards that are on the board. So hopefully Robert Cucunato can get them. Even just a like a Signal Pest. just
something other than the Springleaf Drums that we had last game?
Yeah, I mean, he just had all this stuff, but none of it did anything. His creatures even only attacked for 0.
All right, so Robert is going to take a look at his 6. Let's see if it is keepable. Tom seems to be indifferent with his 7, but he will hold on to it. A Scry is going to leave a card on top for Robert Cucunato.
And this is Robert's first top 8. I would be shivering in my boots playing against Tom Ross.
No,
excuse me.
This is Cucunato's 5th top 8.
Oh, 5th top 8. Whoops, I had it mixed up with another player.
Yep. Ayers is the first top 8. Robert's going to start off with an Inkmoth Nexus and a Vault Scourge.
So kind of a humble start, but at least he's got 2 threats on the board. And no Tron land from Tom Ross, certainly a notable thing in this game. This means that he's not going to be able to have one of his really big, powerful plays until turn 4. And if Robert isn't disrupted, it's entirely possible that he is able to line up a turn 3 kill.
All right, so Tom is going to find an Urza's Power Plant off of his Ancient Sturians. Here we just have another Inkmoth Nexus and a Cranial Plating for Robert.
And Robert's playing so fair. He's just playing 1 spell a turn. Come on, Robert.
That Vault Scourge is going to attack, and even the life total's up at 19 apiece. Looks like Tom has a Warping Whale. He can get rid of that
I like that.
Vault Scourge, but he is just going to use a Sylvan Scrying, go get another piece of Tron. That is the mine that he needs. He has a tower in his hand, so he will be able to assemble Tron on turn 4. He just has to live through the next 2 turns.
And that Warping Wheel is certainly going to do some good work. Robert is going to be able to potentially equip that Cranial Plating onto the Vault Scourge, but the Vault Scourge will still have just 1 toughness despite having much more power. So Warping Wheel will still be able to exile it.
There is an Ornithopter. Here is an Arcbound Ravager.
Now we're starting to cook with some gas.
Cranial Plating is going to be equipped to a Vault Scourge, and it will attack. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 points of damage is going to knock Tom down to 14 and Robert Cucunato all the way up to 23.
And now on Robert's next attack, if Tom decides to kill the Vault Scourge, Robert will be able to still push some of the damage by sacrificing the Vault Scourge to the Ravager.
Tom is going to take his time here to figure out how to navigate this turn and have the highest life total he can going into the next turn so we can start dropping some boom booms.
Yeah, Robert hasn't had a blazing start, but Tom Ross's draw is slow enough and Robert's is just fast enough where Tom needs to take some time and really think about what he wants to do here.
This looks like he's just going to start off with the Nature's Claim, targeting the Ravager. Oh, and Robert is going to go to try and move the counter onto his Vault Scourge.
Yeah, and I like this play from Tom Ross a bit. He kills the Ravager, and then with the Ravager trigger targeting, he can exile the target with his
Warping
Wheel.
Whale. So we don't know if Robert actually sacrificed the Ravager or if he let the Nature's Claim destroy it so that he gains 4 life. Right, he is just going to let that happen. So he did sacrifice the Ravager, who he's not going to gain the life. Interesting enough that he didn't use the Warping Whale to take care of the...
Yeah, I'm a little surprised by that. I wonder if Tom has another way to deal with this Vault Scourge. Or maybe we just, you know, didn't quite see what cards were in his hand properly.
Yeah.
But this Master of Ethereum is a lot of power being added to the board. It means the Vault Scourge is going to attack for 2 more, and it means that Ornithopter is going to be able to get in for a point of damage as well.
Now, it looks like Tom has Oblivion Stone. So if he can make Tron 7, 8 mana, he can Oblivion Stone, get rid of everything that Robert has.
Boom!
And the Glimmer Void is going to die on his end step.
Oh, and Robert Cucunato's board just gets wiped, and he even loses the Glimmer Void, so now he is without colored mana.
Wow, so Inkmoth Nexus is going to charge up and come across, dealing 1 point of infect damage to Tom. Robert has another Nexus. He will take some damage
and
to
now
play a Vault Scourge, and now Tom is just firmly in the driver's seat.
Yeah, and if Tom Ross did have a Warping Wheel, this makes a lot of sense for why he may not have used it, because he knew he was just going to be wiping Robert's board on the following turn. These Inkmoth Nexuses can still potentially steal this game, but it's going to be a very uphill battle for Robert Cucunato.
All right, here's a Karn that's going to get rid of the Vault Scourge, and passing the turn back.
And this is a real rough situation for Robert Cucunato. He has a little bit of an offense left, but Tom Ross is only at 1 infect, despite being down to 6 life, so it's going to be pretty hard for Robert to finish Tom off.
All right, so Arcbound Ravager is going to come down for Robert. Let's see how Tom wants to navigate this turn. He has a lot of mana at his disposal.
Yeah, and this is kind of an interesting situation for Tom Ross because Robert is going to be able to move his power and toughness around as he sees fit with that Arcbound Ravager. And Robert is going to have the opportunity to either attack Tom's life total with normal damage or with infect damage. So despite Robert Cucunato being in a pretty bad situation, there is some play to what he's going to do here, and I'm curious to see how he navigates it.
Well, Tom is just going to plus the Karn and use an Expedition map to go find Ghost Quarter and play it for the turn. So now he has some protection against one of those Inkmoth Nexus. Pass the turn back to Robert, and I just got word Matt Ayers has beat Kevin Jones 2-0 with his Dredge deck and is going to move on to the finals and play against the winner of this match.
Very exciting stuff. I'll be pretty pumped to see the Dredge matchup versus Tom Ross.
Dredge winning this tournament too, didn't you?
It was definitely my pick. He's going to have a hard time against Tom Ross. The normal green-red Tron deck, I feel like, is a buy, but Tom Ross, he's got some good white cards.
The old rest in peace.
Yep.
But Tom still has to get through Robert Cucunato.
Yeah, this match might be done soon, but it's not over yet. Things can still happen.
All right, well, it looks like he's going to try and equip Cranial Plating to that Arcbound Ravager. This might be the time that Tom cashes in that Warping Whale.
Yeah.
All right, so we're going to try and exile.
So I'm not sure.
Oh, maybe he just makes a 1/1.
I think he made a token to block.
And tries to block.
And what's nice about this is you can kind of force a trade. Robert could have sacrificed his Cranial Plating to make his Ravager a 2/2,
yeah.
But Tom Ross would still be in a situation where he's not taking any damage for the turn.
Yeah.
So I like that a lot more than just using it as a removal spell.
It works out exactly the same, except if Robert decides to sacrifice the plating to save the Ravager, then Tom doesn't take the 2 damage that he would have had he tried to exile it. So very heads-up play there by Tom Ross. He's going to get rid of the cranial plating. He was able to get another Ghost Quarter with his Expedition maps. Now he has 2 Ghost Quarters to handle 2 of those Inkmoth Nexus for Robert Cucunato. Oh, and Robert has another basic land now. All right, those are going to attack. We might just see double Ghost Quarter here and then Karn -3 one more time to take care of the other Ghost Quarter, or to take care of the other Inkmoth Nexus.
Yeah, these Ghost Quarters are kind of a big deal. Inkmoth Nexus is a threat that's pretty hard for the average Tron deck to deal with because it dodges all the sorcery speed things that Tron can do, and it flies, so it can't really be blocked. So having those 2 Ghost Quarters for those Inkmoth Nexuses is pretty great for Tom.
Tom is able to put a Fate counter on his Karn on Robert's end step. We're using a Sylvan Scrying here. Potentially going to go get a Sanctum of Ugin. So now at this point, we're just waiting for another,
Huge monster.
Karn, Ulamog, something of that nature. Oh, and he's actually just going to plus his...
Well, he's only at 1 poison, so he can actually ignore a lot of the damage from that Inkmoth Nexus, and he may just want to ultimate his Karn. I mean, that's a perfectly fine way to win this game.
Yeah. Either that or he's just trying to keep the Karn out of Galvanic Blast range, since he doesn't have much else going on.
Yeah, that's true.
And so he's going to go to 2 poison, and there's a Springleaf Drum.
Vicious top deck from Robert Cucunato. Springleaf Drum.
Yeah, well, Tom has a bunch of land. This time he's going to -3 on the Inkmoth Nexus. It's going to bring Karn down to 5. And here we're just going to have a cycle of plus and minus on Karn that's going to take care of Robert's board. Ooh, there's an Ancient Stirrings.
When we see Tom moving a little faster, he knows that this game is basically locked up and he just needs to find a way to win in order to close it out. And Robert Cucunato, he knows that there's a small chance that he can maybe claw his way back into this. It's going to be tough, but he's got to play to his outs.
All right, well, a Chromatic Star is going to be cycled and find another Nature's Claim. Green Anacolis floating. He's just going to plus the Karn and pass the turn. Darksteel Citadel back to Tom. He's just looking for a threat, any threat here. Gonna cycle the Chromatic Sphere. Path to Exile's not quite a threat.
If you're going to have a hard time finding a way to win the game, it might as well be in a game state like this where you've got it, mostly locked up.
All right, he's going to minus his Karn and take care of the Ornithopter from Robert Cucunato. Robert has found a Master of Ethereum. Tom's turn, another Nature's Claim. Plus Karn, Nature's Claim, your Master of Ethereum. Have some more life. Up to 33, pass the turn back to Robert Cucunato. Oh, the next champion. That is, Karn is colorless, so he'll be able to minus on the Etch champion.
Yeah, this is really tough for Robert Cucunato too, because it's not like he can hold back his threats and then play them all at once so that they're not removed as easily, because Karn can just attack Robert's hand as well.
Yep, so that's what he did. He was just able to use Karn to attack Robert's hand. Just going to minus on the mountain, get rid of the red mana. Play another land and pass. Robert Cucunato will pass back to Tom. Tom's going to plus.
There's the Blood Moon. Wow.
And Robert is just going to give up. He's done.
He's fought the good fight, but when the Tom Ross train comes along, that ain't nothing can stop it.
Well, Tom Ross is going to win his semifinal match, 2-0 over Robert Cucunato. Our finals is going to be Tom Ross versus Matt Ayers, who's in this top 8 on his first open top 8. It's going to be Green-White Tron versus Dredge. This is going to be pretty exciting.
Yeah, this is going to be really exciting. In particular, both of us as recent Dredge players, we've played this style of matchup quite a bit. I haven't played specifically against the green-white version of Tron very much, but the green-red version of Tron is a very, very good matchup for Dredge.